Welcome into the Joe Dickey Electric Scoreboard. I'm Mike Ackelson along with Anthony Hartwig. Week 2, still not completely in the books. We had some things that we don't like. We don't like weather delays, first and foremost. So we have a couple games that are running a little behind yet, but they should be complete tonight. We had a couple games moved to tomorrow and a couple canceled because of illness. I mean,
it wouldn't be week 2 without some wildness.
Yeah, right? something added to it. And it's funny, most of the rain affected north of Columbiana County where we're located. But they did get some things rolling and get games in. And tell you what, interesting week 2. We know who's for real. We know who's not.
Or at least, I don't want to like overreact to it, not, but at least like, okay, you got to work on consistency.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you can't let a win go to your head and then come out the following week and not look good. So, because you got to be ready. It's a 10-week sprint, and you got to give your best every 10 weeks.
Exactly. And we saw some of those teams that aren't necessarily used to win last week, and that was my question all week. How are they handling the win?
Yeah. Now, you know what's cool? Our man Ty Bartell.
He's back.
He got to call the debut of the Southeast Pirates here in the YSN family, and had a pretty good game there for a while. And then all of a sudden, Southeast decided we're going to put this thing to bed.
I don't know what Coach Ewell said to those boys in the halftime locker room. Huh? It was 8-6 going into halftime with Southeast leading it 33-0. They outscore Matthews in the second half, and they started literally right out of the gates with an Alante Masrock, a freshman touchdown return on the kickoff too. And they just really got the ball rolling in the second half and didn't stop. Here's a name you guys are going to need to get to know, and I'd say probably big dog potential for this one too. Briar had at least 150 yards, maybe 200. I'm trying to tabulate the final yardage. 3 touchdown night for him out of the backfield tonight. He was doing work. The offensive line of the Pirates were doing work this week compared to last week against Akron Garfield. It looked like a whole unit. It looks like they were playing as one. And that second half, man, they really woke up and they were playing some inspired football.
Well, Ty's out here counting yards.
I love it. Like you're in mid-season form, my friend. My big thing I want to say is the linemen don't get a lot of love. But what I could see of that game, they were absolutely just the second half. They came out with a chip on their shoulder, and the holes they were blowing open were massive.
And I feel like that went into the second half speech too. I feel like they were able to kind of gel. They were able to connect, kind of play as one unit too. I also think the depth of Matthews kind of hurt them a little bit. I mentioned that back in the Power Hour. Southeast had a little bit more depth, and I think by the third and fourth quarter, you could kind of see the wear and tear and the tiredness of the Mustangs coming out in the second half. And boy, oh boy, did Southeast just not miss though. I mean, 33-0, I think is an emphatic second half statement.
Yeah, you took my question. I was going to ask how much do you think the depth of Southeast helped them in the second half? Ty, in your perspective, watching that second half, how much did the game plan change at all, or do you think the halftime was just that? Like, hey, we're going to wear them down doing the same thing we're always doing, and they just kept the game plan the way it was? Or did you see some adjustments on the Pirates side as well?
They made some minor adjustments, but I think the game plan kind of stayed true and whole to what they were doing the whole game. I think it just was guys were just playing a little bit more sharper. They were quicker to the blocks. They were sharper to the cuts too. And it was just getting the machine to start clicking at a better rate. And I think you saw that a lot more in the second half too. Like I said, it was something that was said in the halftime locker room. And Coach Ewell even said in the post game interview that he challenged a few guys too, and he pointed to a lot of the senior leaders and a lot of the upperclassmen and pointed to them to get them to where they needed to be to get that win. And boy, did they deliver.
They delivered in grand fashion. That was a big win for them. How much does this build momentum now for them moving into week 3, Ty?
I mean, you got Cuyahoga Falls and then you got Newton Falls back-to-back weeks, both on the road before you return home in week 5. I think the win is big, obviously. You need a win to kind of get your grounds rooted in. And I think with this win, I think they're going to be able to carry momentum. It's going to be a tougher challenge in week 3. I think more manageable in week 4, but I think there's potential to see this Pirates team go 3-1 if we're starting to see that second half Pirates team where the blockers are getting out there quicker and you see that offensive line kind of gelling as one whole unit, creating those holes for their backs, because they got a three-headed monster that they could turn to out of the backfield too, and all of those guys can produce in different ways.
Ty, what a great debut it was for Southeast football on the network, and we can't wait to see them out there again and back on the network again next week. Ty, thanks for coming on today to talk about your game, and we appreciate all the work that you do for us.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and go Pirates! Right, what a win!
There you go.
To another announcer in the slot,
and he had a great finish,
and he absolutely
did.
Derek, buddy.
What a finish down there in United between East Canton and the Eagles. 31-28, United comes away with the win. But I'm going to steal your thunder real quick. That goal line stand late was the difference.
Wow. Just wow. There couldn't have been a blade of grass between the point of that football and the goal line as the fumble. East Canton goes to the Wildcat 3 times in a row, and the third time was not the charm. They fumble it away, and the Eagles hold on for the victory.
Well, you know what was funny, Derek? We were watching it here. We were listening to you on the call, and at first, East Canton players are celebrating like we're in. We're in.
I thought it was a touchdown. I really did. I didn't see the fumble from my vantage point, and I was as fooled as anybody. But wow, just wow.
And then that flock of Eagles come out there, and the kid had the ball. Like I saw it, I looked right at Anthony, and I says, "Hey, wait a minute! They fumbled. They didn't stop them. They fumbled."
Yeah, that was nuts. You had it all tonight. We had defensive stands. We had kickoff fumble recoveries. We had it all tonight. If you weren't entertained, boy, oh boy, it was great.
Derek, one of the things I want to ask about that play, it's what makes high school football special, right? Because in college or pros, you're going to go to the review. You're going to see like 500 different angles of that play. Yeah. Maybe it was a touchdown. Maybe it wasn't. But in high school, it's just the call on the field, and that's it. And you can think it's a touchdown. You can think it wasn't. But at the end of the day, there's nothing proven one way or the other.
Yeah, and you would have thought that this game wouldn't have been as close. I mean, you had an East Canton team that, pretty much got boat raced by Toronto last week. Mm-hmm. A little bit of a measuring stick for United in Division 6 to see where they stand. And boy, oh boy, those Hornets made it very interesting.
So let me ask you something, Derek. Put on your honesty cap. Do you think it was more East Canton being fired up for this game, or more United maybe overlooking an opponent a little bit?
I don't think United overlooked anything. I think East Canton's a good football team, and they were out to prove something tonight. After that 41-0 loss last week, I think their pride was hurt a little bit, and they played lights out. I mean, they did a lot of good things tonight. The passing game was not working early for them, but they kept going back to the young fella, sophomore Aiden Stevens. He dropped 4 straight to start the game, but ended up getting rewarded with a 15-yard touchdown catch. No, East Canton just didn't go away.
Oh, Hornets don't go away,
No,
they're aggressive little insects,
United cleaned it up offensively. They only had 1 turnover to their 4 last week, but it was just one of those games, man. Grind it out, and who's going to come out with the ball last is going to win sort of games. And it was just entertaining for week 2. Great game.
Well, when they went up 11, I believe, or 10. They went up 10.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking to myself, United's got them right where they want them. And all of a sudden, East Canton struck. And then when United had to give them the ball back, and I'm watching East Canton drive down, I'm like, boy, this is not what we're expecting here. And all of a sudden, I'm like, and I said to the guys, I'm like, hey, yelled out the game number. I'm like, better get there. It looks like East Canton may punch us in.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if there was a timeout taken or not.
There was. Yes.
Okay. After that timeout, something flipped on the Eagles defense.
Yeah.
Because they barely gave up maybe 6 inches on 3 plays.
Absolutely. That was a great goal line stand, and the crowd was into it. I mean, you bought the whole seat, but you only needed the edge tonight down in Hanoverton.
I'm not sure you were even on the edge. You had to be on your
stand up.
Yeah, absolutely. Great game. So to Crestview next week. It lives in United.
Yeah, and Crestview going to be another team like East Canton that's going to be looking for a win that they desperately need. So United might be in another dogfight next week.
Well, that's a typical Columbiana County game. Like,
Oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
That's
going to
an
be
old school ITCL rivalry, you know?
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's why
Old school TCL. Exactly. I couldn't have put it
TCL,
any better.
Going
Yeah.
all the way back to even the TCL, they were both in there.
Yeah.
Those are that was circled on both schools' calendars week 3. That is going to be just a great game next week.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have a guy down in Crestview, so I got the week off, but I'll be in Salem next week looking at some family members in the band. But I'll be following closely with you guys to make sure that United keeps the train rolling.
Well, enjoy your week off. We'll see you back here in week 4 and have fun at your game next week. That way, at least you cover the family obligations early in the football season.
How about you call back in next week and give us an update on the band? Give us the analysis.
I can do that. I can do that.
We don't
Not a problem.
We don't want a week to go by without Derek Rhodes on the scoreboard.
Hey, one other thing. Can you help me out? How did the Bulldogs do down in Palestine? I know they were at Wyndham tonight, and I couldn't catch a score. You guys got one?
It's not good. It's not good, Derek. It's not good, Derek.
It's not good. I'll give it to you. 45-12 Bombers.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they opened the game recovering an onside kick. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Outstanding. So it looks like United's the only 2-0 team then in the EAOC.
Wellsville's still playing.
Yeah, Wellsville
had a
still
delay.
playing. They were leading.
It's a close game.
Okay.
But yeah, and Lisbon got canceled.
Right.
Columbiana lost to McDonald. Valley Christian is playing tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, hey, good. All is well still in Hanoverton, gentlemen, after a close one tonight.
There you go.
That's a win that those kids will remember forever.
Well, thanks, Derek, man. We appreciate it, and enjoy next week.
Yes, sir. Have a good night, gentlemen.
You too.
When you talk about like memories in high school and things you never forget, you're going to be talking about we forced a fumble on the goal line.
Oh yeah, it lives in infamy.
And we have someone else coming on, Mike, and he had
another great game.
Maybe the best game of the night.
Yeah,
first overtime game of the year on YSN.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, let's bring him in. Gary Niddle in here. He called the Canfield game. Gary, we're sitting here, and I watch Canfield drive, and then I watch Mansfield drive, and right before he goes to kick the field goal, I look at Anthony. I says, the field goal is not going to be good. I smell overtime. And they're like, what does overtime smell like? And I says, desperation.
I mean, I'm almost speechless at this point. It's our first home game at Canfield, and we had everything. We had 2 kick returns for touchdowns. At halftime, the Tigers only had 44 yards of total offense, and yet we had a tie game. Canfield, at the end of the game, the final stats, they almost put up 400 total yards to 130. If you look at the score, if you just look at the stats, they controlled the game on the ground. They controlled the game time of possession, total plays. But special teams play a role. We mentioned that throughout the game. And after the first kick return, the Cards go and take their first lead of the year, and then the kick return, an 80-yard kick return. Then they score in the second half, and then you have another kick return. The fact that the resilience that the Cardinals had, I mean, they could have just went in the tank. I mean, that's one of those is debilitating. 2 of those to survive through, and then a turnover on top of it. This game had everything. And Enzo Coca really answered the bell tonight. There's been a lot of questions. The young group at Canfield, and he did a great job at the end of the game. I think time management, he had a great pass. And then all 3 carries at the end of the game in the first overtime, and he gets the score. I think this is going to give him a lot of confidence, and this is a big win for Canfield.
Gary, I like that you brought up Enzo because I think last week, his first game, it's West Branch. Probably, it didn't go the way he wanted it to. He didn't play terribly, but he never really found the rhythm and never really got a chance to get confidence. You brought that big word confidence. How much do you think this win and the plays he was able to make down the stretch will guide him through the rest of the season?
I talked to Enzo before the game, just obviously, being his coach at baseball the last couple of years. And, I said, go get it, young man. And he did that tonight. And then after the game, I got to see him in the locker room, and he had a smile ear to ear. He's confident to begin with. He's a very confident player. But sometimes you need to have things go your way. And he was able to, make his own, we talk about luck. He made his own luck tonight. He had a big interception also, that we haven't talked about yet. He's gaining that confidence. And like I said, they're a young team. And you got to understand, and I mentioned this on the broadcast, West Branch very well could go 10-0 this year. And you start on the road against them with a young team and a little banged up Cardinal team. You got to take that with a grain of salt. And I think Coach Ignacio did a heck of a job getting them ready this week, because that Tiger team is a pretty good team too. The stat of the night, their head coach has been there 15 years, and they lost last week for the first time in 15 years. They started off 0-1 to a very good Akron St. V's team by a touchdown. It's a good team. I mean, they're going to win a lot of games this year, and that's a big one for the Cardinals to get to 1-1.
Stole my thunder just a little bit, Gary. I wanted to talk about that defense. Every time I turned in, it wasn't one kid making a tackle. There was two, there was three, there was four. They in constant pressure in the backfield tonight. I was watching this team and I was like, that is one of the best defensive efforts I've seen from a high school team.
I've known Coach Ignacio. I went to high school, graduated with him. He was in my wedding. I was in his wedding. I know what he's about. He's a defensive guy. He's always been a defensive guy. They're going to rest on his defense. And he told me, coming into this game, the big concern last week was those, you guys saw it, a lot of penalties, a lot of cramping. Oh my God. He said, I've never seen a team cramp up like they did last week. And this week, the defense came to play. Unfortunately for us, Craig and I, it was a hard time saying names because, as you said, I don't know how many times I said it's a cluster of Cardinals because, they could not run inside. The only success the Tigers had every once in a while is they'd bounce it outside for a couple yards, but they were not running within the tackles. It just wasn't happening. So hats off to the Cardinals tonight.
Yeah. The defensive game plan was phenomenal. And I'm sure they'll clean up the special team issue real quick. I know Joe. That'll, while the kids will come in there, all right, we're 1-1. He's going to be like, sit down. We're going to go over special teams right now.
I think I said that in the broadcast a number of times, win or lose. And then after the game, I talked to Coach Ignacio and I said, congrats on the win. And I said, boy, I wouldn't want to be in the film room tomorrow. He agreed with me. But it's a lot easier going into that film room 1-1 than 0-2. I think if they lose that game, they could very well lose the season, to be honest. To lose a game at home, like if it would have happened, it's hard, a new coach, a new system and everything. I think these kids now can buy in. And I'll tell you what, Bowling, the running back, I don't think I've seen, there's a handful I can name in the past couple of years, a harder runner than him. He did not go down with contact. If you go watch this game or get to see him next week, they had to blow the whistles most of the time because he just refused to go down. Craig and I, that I was calling, Craig Alter, he's going to be a break some this year. He's got speed too. Really like him.
Gary, really quick before I let you go, just preview next week for Canfield and what they're looking ahead to.
I feel like Coach Ignacio. I didn't even look ahead to next week, to be honest. I didn't even ask them. They're going to go on the road at Olmsted Falls. So it's going to be a road trip, and Canfield always does one of these road trips. And they're a team that had a tough game last year, much like Mansfield. Mansfield kind of took Canfield to the woodshed last year, and they got the so. It's going to be a long week ahead. But by get healthy. I know that was the one thing they got to
get healthy indeed. And Gary, we want to thank you for popping on, talking about
Gary.
Probably the game of the night, going to overtime with Canfield. We appreciate it, and we'll see you soon, bud.
Absolutely. Good job tonight, guys.
Hey, you too. Have a good one, buddy. Great call. I love Gary Niddle. He is a great guy.
And talk about a coach that just knows. He's a coach.
Yeah, he's a coach.
He understands what these coaches are going through. I don't care what sport you're playing, you're coaching in. You get it. You know what it's like to coach young men, and he gets it, and he knows Joe pretty well. So that's great insight to have Gary on to talk about that game, and it's also awesome to hear his call.
Well, and a little tidbit about Gary: he interned while I was working at Channel 21. He was one of our interns, one of the best. And that's why he is a good coach. Mm-hmm. Attention to detail, he took care of business. And That's why I've always enjoyed having Gary around.
It's probably why he's also such a good broadcaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, we want to talk about another guy that had a great big evening tonight.
Yeah.
The game got started late, delayed by weather. Wilmington came over. I believe this is the first time Wilmington and Hubbard ever played. It might be the last time.
It might be the.
It was all Eagles from the get-go, 39-7. But we have to give a shout out, and I would think Alex Hackwalder has to be on that Big Dogs nomination because this was his night at the office. He combined for 6 touchdowns, 5 through the air, 1 rushing. What a performance by him. He is a really good quarterback, and through 2 weeks, I want to say he may be close to double digits in touchdown passes already.
And that's a Hubbard team that is historically known for their running.
Running, yes.
And here comes a quarterback that can say, "Nah, man, I'm gonna chuck it. We're gonna run the air raid now."
Yeah.
They don't. They still run the ball pretty well, but when you add that to their repertoire,
It makes him a lot harder to play against.
The
And
NE8 is looking really good right now. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about Hubbard right now, but we'll talk about it later. Poland won again. South Range looking as strong as ever. Struthers
Struthers.
won. So that NE8 conference, very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have another announcer popping in the green room talking about their game. It's Mr. Chris Sigler.
Hi, Siggy.
Siggy.
What's
Welcome
up,
aboard.
guys?
Hey, you got to see a pretty good game tonight that, traditionally goes back and forth. And for a while it did until the Tigers decided enough was enough.
It was a close game, especially early on in the first half. It was a game that was just marred by penalties, really. Springfield got out to an early 14-0, and it's really a big play. Aiden Appel, a punt return of 75 yards is what really sprung this game open. When they were up 7-0 to make it 14-0, and Coach Guerrero, you thought that they were going to put it in overdrive at that point. But give credit to Brookfield. They fought back, and they did the same thing last week against Hubbard. They fell down, fought back. When you got a player like Rico Smith, you're never out of touch with any lead that the other team has. He was able to put it in. But then the big play again, they had a running back, Case and Kosick, break off a 64-yard run for Springfield. Brookfield fought back again, behind a touchdown pass to Rico Smith in the flat. I talked to Steve Leslie, I did the game tonight, and I always thought that they just needed to get these little quick hitters from their quarterback. They were asking a lot of Josh Rankin, only a sophomore, to try to throw the ball downfield. And they got the ball to Smith in the flat, and he just took off. You put him in the open field, you're not going to catch him. He just turns the Jets on, and they were back within a touchdown. And then the penalty bug just hit Brookfield again and again and again. And they had a roughing the punter call late in the first half. It enabled Springfield to get another play. They bring Braden Baird in off the bench, who started the game last week for Springfield at quarterback. And he hits Casey Cunningham with 1 second to go for a touchdown before the half. And it really broke the backs of Brookfield going into the locker room.
I think what happened to Springfield last week at halftime, they said we're not going to allow any time after this score. Because remember, Springfield scored against South Range right before the half. They had like 10 seconds left, so Springfield's thinking we're going to take momentum into the half. And then South Range did what they did, kickoff return for a touchdown. So this time Springfield was like, no time left. We're taking the momentum in the halftime. I want to talk about just bouncing back from that last week, Chris. How much did you see Springfield's resiliency shine through and their ability to say, hey, last week's in the past, and we're going to go get the win this week?
And Steve and I talked about it before the game, about the special teams last week. They were able to score a touchdown, and then South Range struck right back on special teams. Well, then here Springfield tonight strikes on special teams, and it's the resilience that you talk about. And, Coach Guerrero, it's his 18th season. The guy knows how to get to his players. They're a Division VI school that has a ton of players standing on that sideline. It's as if they go up and down that hallway and talk to these boys and say, you want to play football and represent Springfield, and it works. There's something in the water there. They just keep doing it every year. And these kids don't give up. It's a big win. And I know it's only week 2. But if you look at Springfield's schedule, what they have coming up, that Scarlet division in the MVAC right now
Not
is
fun.
shaping up to be a humdinger as we go on through the season. Next week, no slouch, Geneva comes to New Middletown next week. Division III, going to be a tough game. So tonight's win was really big for this Springfield Tiger team and confidence. They were able to play from ahead, able to give the ball to Dante Gentile, who was a great running back coming back as a senior. And he just ran downhill the whole second half.
Well, and you mentioned about next week, Chris. That is a big, big game.
Yeah.
Every game's big. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But if they can pull out a win next week, what that does for them computer point wise is massive in Division Six.
And just not just next week. And I'm going to flip it real quick to Brookfield. The gray side of the MVAC may not be as strong as the Scarlet this year. So Brookfield's season isn't over either after 2 weeks. When you have two players that are just sophomores in Rankin and Smith, they're going to be able to compete this year in that gray side of the MVAC. So I think they're going to be okay if they just clean up penalties. And their coach has been around for 20 years too. We had two of the more veteran coaches in the area. Randy Clark's been doing it a long time. And Steve and I talked about it is the things that they can correct, the penalties, they're going to be okay. Every time they had positive plays tonight, it backed them up.
Yep.
They got backed up behind the sticks. They were 2nd and 12, 3rd and 15 all night long. So if they can just correct that stuff, they're going to be okay. But with Springfield in that Scarlet, I'm staring at these teams right now. Waterloo's off to a good start. Campbell Memorial, who had a tough game tonight, they're a completely different team than we've seen in the past.
They're going to be tough.
Jackson Milton's got a good start already right now. Western Reserve's tough. Middle Ridge is 0-2, but they're going to give everybody what they want all year long, it looks like. So McDonald's still for real. Lowellville's going to be for real. So that Scarlet is just going to be a meat grinder week in and week out.
It's going to be brutal, but it's going to be fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the thing, I look at Brookfield, they're young, they're learning.
Yeah.
I can remember back a few years ago, Springfield, I think, went to Brookfield 0-3 or 0-2, and they got a big win up there. If Brookfield can get a win in the next 2 weeks, what it does to turn their season around,
and that was a win, by the way, that Brookfield led most of the game.
Yes.
And I think the Tigers had like a final walk-off touchdown or late in the fourth quarter touchdown to walk away with that. And then Springfield went on that big tear.
They went on a big tear.
And went all the way through the playoffs like they did the year before.
Well, Steve and I talked about it during the game. You take away the punt return, the 64-yard touchdown run by Kason Kosick, and the big touchdown pass right before the half. You're talking 3 big plays. You take those plays away, clean up the penalties. This game is probably a 1-score game late in that fourth quarter.
Game.
Absolutely. So, Brookfield's got every opportunity to win that game. Steve and I talked about they hurt themselves more tonight than really they were allowed to be able to overcome. And take nothing away from Springfield, who made big plays at the right time. There was just a lot of turnovers in that game. And every time Brookfield was able to get the ball from Springfield, they gave it right back. So things just didn't bounce their way tonight.
And it'll change. It'll definitely change because I can see Randy Clark right now. Game film watch tomorrow is not going to be fun in Brookfield, but it's going to be a great teaching opportunity where he can say, listen, take the penalties out of this game. Take away a couple mental lapses, and we would have had a chance late in the fourth to pull that one out.
You know what, though? And it's funny because, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris.
No, go ahead, Anthony. Go ahead.
As a coach, I think, you don't want your team to have a penalty problem, but it's a lot better than just being like, we just weren't matched. We were outmatched. Our talent level wasn't there. No, the talent level is absolutely there. You just had to clean up some discipline stuff, and that's a lot easier to fix than just we don't have the guys, right?
Right. Yeah. And they got a dude. They have a dude in Rico Smith. The guy is a dude, and he's only a sophomore. I think everybody forgets that this kid has so much in front of him right now, and the ability is just it's unbelievable. I want to flip the script though. Coach Guerrero, they got a lot to talk about too. They weren't immune from the penalty flag either. There had to have been 30 penalty flags tonight in that football game. And between that and the cramping in the second half, it really slowed the pace down. There was only one touchdown in the whole second half scored. So, I mean, they have a lot to talk about themselves, does Coach Guerrero and Springfield, especially with Geneva next week. You're not going to be able to make all these mistakes and hope for the big play to be able to overcome a good Geneva team. So they have a lot to talk about too. They won the game. You know, that's the number one thing. Hey, he's going to take it. They're 1-1, not 0-2, and they still have a lot to go for the rest of the season.
Well, I know this. Sean will have them ready to play, and I'm just talking to him over the years. Is he'll take every win he gets, but he's going to let them know what they did bad first before he praises them. You tear them down, you praise them. He'll have that team ready to play, and that is a massive game for them. I hope they have a large crowd there next week because that is a big game for them to have at home.
It is. I think the only thing that could possibly screw it up is weather. You know, it was a crazy weather night. I know you guys thought everywhere. I did. We got lucky. It went right around us at Springfield.
I think Wellsville and we are still playing right now, and so is Newton Falls and Jackson Milton.
Lowville is still playing late.
A lot of that weather went down south, and I know you know Toronto and Lowville were in a long delay for a long time, so it's been a crazy evening. And we talked about it. The hydration with these kids is really concerning. You know, they're kids first and foremost. You know, a lot of adults are just as guilty of it as these kids are. And when you have this hot and humid weather all day long that we've had, and you have these delays, halftime, you know, it's worth the discussion. The hydration factor really is starting to affect these teams.
Yeah.
True story here, Siggy. The last 2 days I've been cramping horribly. I work in a very warm warehouse during the week, and I've been eating bananas and drinking Gatorade just to get some salt in me because I'm so hot when I'm done. I don't want to eat. And I'm literally cramping, and I'm like, okay, I know better. I almost drank pickle juice last night.
We're talking about heat cramps right now. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about staying warm on the sidelines.
Easy, Anthony. Not yet.
It's a couple of weeks. You know it's coming.
You guys have anybody waiting to call in right
now?
We got Chris. You.
If you guys want to move on to another game, I'll chime in while I'm on.
We're going to pop up the scoreboard now and put it up on the screen.
Yeah, we'll chime in with us here.
We'll run down the scores of the night.
Yeah, go ahead, guys.
All right, we're going to get to the, I believe it's Century Pools and Spa.
Burnett Pools.
Burnett, geez. I'm bad. I just got fired. Wellsville is up. 7 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. Or no, Wellsville update. They are down now, 30-28 with 7 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Thank you, Mike Swinehart. He's on it. Always.
And he's also reminding us, while we were talking about the NE8, Lakeview has not given up a point.
Yeah. You ruined that. I was waiting to give that on the score.
All right. Sorry.
Anthony, always a step ahead.
Stealing the thunder.
Stealing it all the time.
All right, the YSN scoreboard brought to you by Burnett Pool Spas and Hot Tubs. You can find it at ysnlive.com/scores. Let's look at it. We'll go all the way to the right. We'll scroll over if the mouse will let me go to the page. As you can see, there was a lot of scores coming in tonight. All right, here we go. We'll go up to the top, Mike, and I'll let you take the show. Here we go.
All right, so a big one tonight, and this one was a fun one for us to watch back here, Siggy. Louisville and Alliance, and I'll tell you what, the Leopards were roaring tonight. They take that one 40-14, the final score from there, and that's a big win for them.
Yeah, especially the way that you know what? I have to refresh this so the scores pop up.
Yeah, you said a lot of scores. I didn't see it. I was like,
yeah,
I know Scotty was working on it.
I'm not going to short Scotty as well.
Yeah, Scotty will beat you up. There we go.
I saw him wheeling in. Okay, Here we go. There's the scoreboard.
There you go. Hey, it's week 2. We still have kinks here, right? We're still working on things. So Louisville, big win there, Siggy. They were impressive tonight against Alliance.
That's a team, Louisville. I'm happy to see them get a win early on in the season because where they're located, they're in the Canton area. Being an independent's not easy, and your schedule's going to be tough all season long. They still got to play Canal Fulton Northwest, North Canton Hoover's on that schedule still. South Range is down the line.
on that schedule too in the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no off weeks for them.
No.
And then we'll move along. Blackhawk and Beaver, they had some issues over in Beaver tonight.
So much weather.
And the weather was the one. So they have postponed that till noon tomorrow. So they'll get that one going. And then the game Siggy called 35-13. And he was right. There was only one touchdown in the second half. So all that damage was done in the first half of the game.
Big win for Springfield. Sean Guerrero now 3 wins away from becoming the all-time winningest head coach in Springfield football program history.
He's pretty good.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
And then Beaver Local, they also had a weather delay, but when things got started, Brooke may have wished for that game to be canceled because the Beavers, they really – you want to talk about a team that improved from week 1 to week 2, Siggy. Beaver Local. Last week it seemed like they had a lot of issues, penalties, stuff like that. They really cleaned it up and took care of business tonight.
That's the offense we expect from the Beavers right there.
It is. They had a lot of offense to replace from last season. They come back here in week 2 and get a good win because they got to go on the road to play a year in and year out tough opponent in St. Clairsville next week. And that's going to be a tough trip down south for Coach McKenzie and crew.
We move along. Tough one tonight for the East High Golden Bears. They fall to Chagrin Falls 23-22. That one's one that's going to sting.
It is. The Bears had an opportunity to get a program-building win. It slipped through their fingers a little bit late.
And then Struthers, and we talked about this prior to tonight's game, Anthony, he said that's an interesting game. I wanted to see Cheney's skill. Struthers came out and smacked him in the mouth early and never looked back in this one, Siggy. 28-6, and for the most part, they did what they had to. Cheney did fumble a ball out of the back of the end zone when it was 20-6. I don't know if it changes the game, but boy, it was a play that loomed large.
They score there. It gets to a one-score game. You don't know what that does to Struthers if that tightens them up a little bit. But this Wildcat defense, it's not messing around this year.
No.
It's not. Hey, real quick, you talk about the big uglies up front with Struthers. That's where it starts for them. They're so big up front, and they can just move you on both sides of the ball, and they're doing it right now.
And they were moving the big kids from Cheney. They got a couple of good guys on that defensive line and offensive line. They were, that's not going to be a fun film session to be in if you're a Cowboy.
There's a lot of size on display tonight.
Yeah. And then here's one, United East Canton. This game was absolutely dynamite. I don't know how much you know about this, Siggy, but United, late in the game, stopped East Canton on 3 consecutive plays. I think they gained maybe 6 inches. And on the third play, Derek told us there couldn't have been a blade of grass that separated the goal line from the ball when it got fumbled, and the Eagles come up with a big recovery to secure the win.
I was able to hear Derek talk about it. And you know what that is? That's a program building win for United this year. And what I mean by that is they lost a lot of talent from last year's team. When you lose Dallas McCracken up front, you lose Luke Courtney, a guy that's been doing it for a couple years, a quarterback
doing everything.
And in the kicking game, right, Anthony? So Coach Ogilvie had a lot to replace this year. He's done a great job, and that's a big win for their confidence right now.
And then you got Wyndham. The Bombers' home opener, they were clicking on all cylinders.
This was one where we were gonna think which one of these teams is gonna handle their win, because both of them had struggle seasons last year. They both had wins in week 1. Which one was going to come off that win a little bit better? It was Wyndham at home, just rolling from the start.
Yeah, they looked really good.
But this was 19-12. It was 19-12, and then it just got way out of hand really quick.
Yeah, when it went bad for Palestine tonight, it absolutely did. It just snowballed on them. Another good game, Edgewood and Grand Valley. This was a very close game for a long time. Edgewood tacked one on late, and they come away with a very hard-fought 18-7 win.
A defensive win for Edgewood. We're used to the Warriors putting up a lot of points on the board offensively, but it's good to see them get a defensive win.
Another tough one for Niles tonight. They lose the Holy Name 14-0 if memory serves me right, I'm not sure Niles has scored
They
yet
have
this
not. They
season.
got shut out by Howland in week 1, and they get shut out by Holy Name.
So definitely, they'll be working on that offense coming up. And then we wondered how Howland was going to do off of that big win against Niles. Started with a rivalry game. They went down, and it was a 7-0 game for a long time. Poland tacked one on late, and all of a sudden, once they got up double digits,
And I can't I'm shocked they got this because we even looked at it in the third or fourth quarter. It was 21-7.
yeah,
A lot of this was just I think Howland ran out of gas at the end of the game and gave up a lot of points towards the end. It was a lot closer than 41-7 if you look at the game overall.
mm-hmm. And then Independence over Conneaut tonight, 27-6, your final from that one. And we move along. This is where we got to talk about Lakeview. Offensively, they're clicking. Defensively, they have yet to give up a point, Siggy.
As if the NE8 need any more good teams right now. Steve Leslie and I were talking during a break. You have South Range. You have Hubbard putting up points. You have Girard doing what they're doing. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention Struthers yet. And now you have Lakeview showing up. So good luck. When you talk about meat grinder, there it is. And good for Lakeview that they're having a great start, and that defense is flexing their muscles.
This is a Lakeview team that has started 3-0 before. They've handled their non-conference season. I think the big message to them this year and the big kind of takeaway is going to be we got to finish the league play this time too. It's a tough league, but they got to find a way to win in this league because they can't go 3-0 and then finish the year 3-7.
Well, and that's the funny thing. You get through the first 3 weeks, and you're like, okay, conference play. You're looking at that schedule coming up like, oh, got Struthers this week. Oh, follow that up with Poland. Oh, boy.
South Range.
Here
Here comes Girard.
So what's ahead of you. It is a meat grinder. It's one of the best conferences that we get to watch week in, week out. Trust me, none of these conferences you can take for granted. But this is one you watch and you're just like, wow. And then the tough loss of the night for Camel Memorial. They played their hearts out. And I'm going to give kudo and a lot of credit to LeBray. They hung around, and in the end, found a way to win.
Came down to a walk-off point after.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was only seconds, 2 or 3 seconds left after they scored. That was a fantastic game.
This is a game that could really send Camel Memorial on a trajectory one of 2 ways. They could, just stick their heads down and say, oh, here we go again. Or that coaching staff can just circle the wagons, talk to these kids and say, hey, look, guys, we had the brakes beat off us last year by LeBray. We already won week 1. We're, under 10 seconds away from being 2-0 right now.
Yeah.
Let's pick ourselves up. This isn't last year. This is a new year, and they can really get the things going the right way.
And Matt Marr can attest to this because he's been talking to these players during the week.
Yeah.
But listening to their interviews, listening to Coach King when I got to interview him preseason, this is a different Camel team. They're hungry. They're motivated. They've been with Coach King for 4 years now. So these seniors on the team, they just feel a little bit more like this is our last chance with Coach King. We have to go out there and win this for the guy that's been with us for 4 years. And I see it on the field. They care a little bit more about what they're putting out on the field.
Yeah.
And I think though they're going to play in that Scarlet division. Okay,
It's tough.
but it's against teams they're not familiar with.
Yep.
Not going out there against teams that they haven't had any success against in the past. So that may be a good thing for them.
Here's another thing. They're a lot more comparable to their size than the Crestviews, the Garfields, the teams they played over in the grade tier.
Yeah, that's true. They're playing more teams.
Bigger schools, bigger roster sizes.
Yeah.
And now they're playing teams that are a lot more comparable to what their size of football is.
Then we go across the border, Mohawk getting their first win. And that's another rivalry. They've opened the season with 2 rivalry games. They played Neshinnick last week, which was a tough loss. They come back and they beat Laurel this week, 32-27. And then a rivalry game.
Yep.
That was not much of a rivalry game. Girard popped in too quick. Liberty got one, but then Girard said, hold my Gatorade, because it was over. Pat Pearson's team, just the offense, man, the way they can strike up in Girard, they're fun to watch.
It's hard to keep this Liberty team in check, and Gerard's defense had a good game tonight.
I said to Steve Leslie, guys, real quick, does it matter that whoever Girard's quarterback is every year?
No.
They just seem to do it every year. When you replace a player like Wade a couple years ago who could just light it up, and here we go next year. This is the year we're going to get Girard. Well, no, it's not. They just keep doing it every year.
One year they had like 3 different quarterbacks because of injury, and they still went out and won games.
Right.
I honestly think they groom their quarterbacks early. They know, and the kid that's waiting in the wings knows that when he gets an opportunity, if he doesn't take full advantage of it, there's another guy waiting right behind him.
I think West Branch is the same way. We saw.
Yep.
Think back when Brock Hilliard graduated a few years ago, and Drew DeShields comes out. No one knows what Drew DeShields is going to do behind the center, and he has the career that he had as a quarterback for West Branch. And then when he graduates, everyone's like, "Well, what's it going to look like now?" And Bo Allensaus does what he did last year, and now you'll look at what Jeremiah Thomas is doing now in his first 2 games. There's some programs that are just like nurturing environments for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yep.
At West Branch, they just pick them off a shelf. Okay, your turn. And then another great game. This one ended in overtime. Canfield, and I think Gary Niddle was 100% correct. Canfield had to come away with a win in this one.
I said that to Steve.
Mansfield beat them last year. I mean, this is a very good Mansfield team. You're not gonna underlook them, and Canfield's defense played extremely well.
Yeah, I mean, they beat them in every statistical category tonight. The problem was they gave up
2 non-offensive touchdowns.
2 touchdowns on kick returns.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way Mansfield got on the board. And trust me, why they had to have this one, they got a tough game next week, Siggy, because they head up to Olmsted Falls.
Yeah, and I think everybody thought Canfield was staring at 0-2 in the face. And for those kids, probably they listen. These kids are kids. They listen to what people say, and they know who they're playing. They know who they played last year. And if something probably clicked with these kids midway through that first quarter, into the second quarter, hey, we're in this game. Let's go. We are in this game. We can play with these guys. And they did, and good for them. That's a big win for the Cardinals.
Yeah, that was absolutely good. And then as we move along, Southeast, who made their debut tonight on YSN, handled Matthews. This was a 7-6 game at one point. And like Ty said when he was on, when Southeast, I don't know what was said at halftime, but it was worth 33 points.
And Ty nailed it on the Power Hour today. He talked about it. It was depth. Matthews, no shade, but the reality is they struggle with numbers, and eventually that caught up to them.
Yeah.
Yep. I saw it last week. Matthews played Jackson Milton. And in the first half, they hung with him, and they fell apart in the second half. Cramped up, got tired, and they just got worn down.
They're a good team. They're just going to lose the war of attrition because they
right.
don't have guys to get fresh.
McDonald looks like they are clicking on all cylinders, guys. They really manhandled the Clippers tonight. 35-3 the final for there. I believe they're 2-0 to start the season.
2-0.
So we knew Danny Williams told us last year this was a young team. They come back, they got some, experience under their belts, and they're showing it through 2 weeks.
35-9, 35-3. Those are their 2 wins.
Yeah.
So dominating both times.
And offensively, we're used to them running that wing T.
Mm-hmm.
They're passing the ball now with it, which makes them even more dangerous.
Good luck.
Yeah. And then tough one for Lakeside. Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, not a problem with them tonight. 49-14 your final from there. Jackson Milton did get the win over Newton Falls, 48-6. And again, you know what looms down the road for them. They need these wins early.
And more talk about that Scarlet tier. Here's Jackson Milton saying we're not out of the conversation.
And how about
they're
Orange?
just team.
Yeah. How about Orange, Siggy? They start the season. I know in the first time since they've joined the YSN family, they are 2-0 to start the season. And they were impressive because this game was close. And all of a sudden, when Orange decided to put it away, they did. They made some big plays.
These two teams have been playing each other for a while. for the last couple of years, and it hasn't been close the other way. So this is a big win for Orange to beat a team that usually has their number.
What were you saying, Siggy?
I got to be honest. I saw this score earlier. Middle Ridge came back. They were down, made it a 1-score game. I saw in our chat that Orange scored again. I didn't realize how impressively they won this game until I looked at the scoreboard right before this show. I just couldn't believe what happened.
Yeah, that was good. And then the Perry Pirates are the Perry Pirates. They went up to Euclid and absolutely did a number on them, 42-0. Speaking of teams that did a number on somebody, Pie Valley, the Lakers, they were up early. In the first quarter, it was 24-0. They never looked back as they shut out Cardinal as they pick up their second win of the season. And then we move along. Rootstown all over champion tonight, 35-0. South Range, here's a good story for you, Siggy.
This is great.
So we're sitting here and we're getting ready to go tonight. And I looked at Anthony and Eric, I said, hey, guys, pull up the South Range game. If there's ever a school that works on special teams, it's South Range. There's a chance they could take the opening kickback. And Anthony starts laughing. He goes, yeah, they could, blah, blah, blah. They kicked the ball off Siggy, and guess what happened?
Game opening kickoff return for a touchdown.
And it was just over. And Ron Johnson had to be beside himself from that point because South Range made it 14-0, and they held that for a while.
Yeah, Salem's defense held strong for especially the first half, but their offense just couldn't move the ball. I think they had one drive that went deep in the South Range territory. They turned it over on downs. They just couldn't score enough to keep up with South Range, and eventually that Raider team just overwhelmed them.
Then a good win for Crestview because they got a big one next week against United. 35-14 in the finals. They beat Southern Local. Crestview looked good in this game.
Crestview looked good. They're bouncing back after a loss in week 1, and they have, like you said, a really tough matchup next week, and they're bringing momentum into it.
And if anybody wants to know, are the Warren JFK
Eagles
back? For real? Are they back? Are they soaring?
I think they're back.
There's a pretty good chance. I was shocked. I believe it was 22 to 23 nothing in halftime, JFK. And I looked at them. I'm like, well, maybe Garfield's got them where they want them because a few years ago, JFK had a big lead up there and had to make a goal line stand on the final play in order to win. JFK went up there and absolutely took care of business. That is a big, big win for them, Sig.
It's probably my most surprising score of the night. Not because I didn't think JFK could, but the fact that they went there and they just dominated the game from start to finish. That's surprising.
Not an easy place to go get a win either at Garfield because that's a team that, like Pie Valley, will just maul you to death. And for JFK to go up there and punch them in the mouth is a big win.
Yeah. All right, so we move along. We got to hurry up here. We've got in. I like this.
We like talking, Mike. We like talking.
Yeah, I do. Wycliffe, a winner over Ashtabula St. John, 24-14. Hubbard, Alex Hackwalder was awesome tonight. 6 touchdowns, 5 passing, 1 rushing. If I'm correct, I believe he may have 10 touchdown passes this season.
Rain delay did not hurt the Eagles at all.
No.
Yes,
start this game until 8 o'clock.
I believe he has 12 total touchdowns for the season in 2 games.
Yeah. So you want to talk about a big dog. There's one out there in Eagle territory. And then you got West Branch. They just took absolute good care of business again against Woodbridge. That's a team that they had to play twice last year. Beat them in the regular season, then the playoff game
got kind of,
it got dicey. But West Branch flexing their muscles early as they come away with a win. Ursuline gets a big win on the road as they beat Bishop Hartley 41-10. So a very good win for the Irish. Here's a tough one. East Liverpool falls to Indian Creek 20-14. That's a tough loss because they were in that game.
Not an easy trip to go to Wintersville to play Indian Creek. It's always tough. Tough start this year for Coach Cusick. Had a lot of returning starters on offense. And an interesting game, Matt, comes up next week as East Liverpool goes to Salem for Salem's home opener, and both teams are looking for win number 1.
Yeah, that is, and it's become a big rivalry game, and it is very big next week because you don't want to start winless after 3 weeks.
Right?
No, I don't. No one does.
And speaking of a team that needs to find a win, Cardinal Mooney. Bill Angeles St. Joe's had their way with them tonight. Mooney's offense has only produced, I think, 2 touchdowns all year.
One.
It was,
I had
it
him.
was 14. No, it was 14 nothing
14
last
nothing
week.
last week.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had him last week, and they're still trying to find an identity on offense. They replaced the quarterback. You got to replace Ashton O'Brien.
Mm-hmm.
And last week, they moved the ball well between the 30s last week. I'm not sure about this week. That defense to give up 38 points, though, is really what is glaring because that defense is good for Cardinal Mooney. And they got a tough one next week, too. They go back home and welcome in Big Red. So
yeah, but that's also a VASJ team that's constantly in the regional finals, it feels like. So not a slouch opponent. I mean, nothing slouch on Moody's schedule, but it's not like they're going and playing it. I mean, that's a really good VASJ team.
Now, the
but
last
that schedule,
update,
week in, week out, is tough to answer the bell every week.
Yeah, it is. But, hey, if anybody can right the ship, it'll be Cardinal Mooney.
Sure.
And then you look, the last report we had from Wellsville, Weirton Madonna, there was 7 minutes left, 30-28. Weirton Madonna has come back to take that lead. At one
it's
point,
final now, Mike.
Oh, it's a final? Okay. At one point, Wellsville was up by 2 scores.
Yep.
So that's a tough loss for the Tigers. That's a long bus ride home all of a sudden.
No doubt.
And then Waterloo, they blank Latonia tonight, 24-0. As we said, watch out for Waterloo. They're playing some pretty good football. They got some big boys up front.
That Scarlet Tier. Here we go again.
And then Hoban, they hosted Don Bosco Prep out of New Jersey. They beat them 21-7.
First win of the year for the Knights.
Yep. Lake beats Boardman 34-13. Fitch goes on the road. Nice win at Massillon Jackson 27-17. They're 2-0 to start the season.
And Mike, I can tell you this Toronto game has gone final. Toronto gets the win over Lowville 51-20.
I'm going to say this. That Toronto team's got
it's in the fourth quarter.
Okay, that Toronto team's got to be for real because we watched Lowville last week.
Mm-hmm.
They looked really good at home in their opener. And all of a sudden you look at that and you're just like, wow. So Toronto's got something good going up there.
I'm going to interject too is Lowville maybe need to reassess their defensive side of the football right now as well. Gave up a lot of points to the Columbiana team last week.
Mm-hmm.
Gave up 51 to Toronto this week. And you see how many Columbiana scored this week, only 3. So that might be a concern for the Rockets is addressing that defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, that's always kind of been one of their things. They've always been an offensive team and the defense trying to find ways to, contribute and play an even game. So no change there.
Well, hey, Siggy, we do appreciate you hopping on with us.
Yeah, guys.
That gets us through the scoreboard show tonight here, the Joe Dickey Electric Scoreboard. Week 2, pretty much in the books. I think we're down 1 game, just got to be decided yet. So, and I know we have games tomorrow, Anthony.
Yeah, Valley Christian got moved to tomorrow. Now Beaver's playing tomorrow. Chris, you're the schedule guy.
We got 3 games. We got 3 games tomorrow.
So there
I
you
just
go.
wanted to make sure I wasn't missing any.
No, you got Valley Christian going to St. Thomas Aquinas, Western Reserve.
Oh, yeah.
Going on the road to play Trinity Garfield tomorrow. And then now Blackhawk and Beaver are scheduled at noon tomorrow as well.
So there you have it. You got 3 games. Hey, no better place to be watching them than YSN. We got you covered. Plus, may even have some soccer and volleyball tomorrow.
Yep, I'll be at volleyball for sure. So we'll have coverage of Grand Valley hosting South Range and Grand Valley. And I think we have some soccer as well on the network tomorrow.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, hey, we're glad you all joined us here tonight for the Joe Dickey Electric Scoreboard. That'll put a wrap on week 2. Make sure you come back with us next Friday evening. We will have the audible call for you starting right around between 6:50, 6:55. We'll get on the air. We'll switch around to a lot of the games. We'll let you hear a lot of the guys calling, including Chris Sigler. He'll probably be somewhere cool next week. And then the nice thing is you schedule them. You get to pick the games you want.
I get to go to YSU next week. I'll be there for Mooney and Steubenville. So
see what I tell you.
Picking the games.
That is a great game to go see, buddy. But hey, we appreciate you hopping on with us. Thank you for joining us out there tonight, folks. We're glad you joined us. Don't forget, next Friday night, audible call around 6:50, and then we will follow that up with the Joe Dickey Electric Scoreboard. Everybody, please have a safe week. We'll see you back here for week 3.
YSN thanks you for watching this presentation of Your Sports Network.
Restore